Welcome to Black Hats. The objective of the game is to be the first player to get to 5 points. Each player has a point tracker, one on either side of the board, and whoever gets to 5 first wins. The game ends immediately. The way you get points is by capturing the enemy data. I am the purple player, and Ray here is the green player. So I am trying to capture the green data and bring it back to my data server. The other way to get points is to disconnect the enemy netrunners, hereafter called runners, from the network. A quick overview of what we're looking at here. The board is referred to as the network. Each individual hexagonal space is referred to as a node. And any nodes of the same color that are connected are a subnet. So these three would be a blue subnet, whereas these four over here are also a blue subnet, but a different one. Each player has some number of runners. You can see over here I've got my 4. And each runner also has a rig, the computer that they're using to log into the network, as well as a little token that will represent them on the board. Besides that, each player has a deck of 20 cards, and players before the game will customize their selection of runners, rigs, and the cards in their deck. So everybody will be creating a unique loadout for themselves. At the start of the game, players will randomly determine who starts with the first player token by rolling dice or playing rock, paper, scissors, whatever they like. But we've got some dice right here to represent the data, so let's just use those. All right, well, we got a tie, but let's assume for the sake of this that I won. So I will have the first player token. Whoever has the first player token will deploy their runners via the tokens on their home row, which is just what we call the 6 nodes closest to their board edge. I'll go ahead and put these out here. Then the other player will do so as well, in whichever of the 6 spaces they like. Also, at the beginning of the game, each player will draw 6 cards. I'm not hiding anything here, so I'll put them face up on the table for now, rather than holding them secretively in my hand like you normally would. And the other player would do the same. And now we're ready to start. Black Hats is played over rounds, and each round is made up of turns. On your turn, there are 3 options you have available to you. And if you ever forget, we will have these handy little reference cards that lay that all out. So the first of your options is to play 1 card. At the start of the game, we drew 6 cards, and after each round, we're going to draw 2 more, so you'll have a steady supply of cards to choose from. To play a card, of course, you take a card out of your hand, you reveal it to your opponent, and you do what the text says. I'm not going to go over what all of the cards do, but I will explain one specifically in Hack the Network. This card, and many other cards and abilities in the game, refer to hack some number of nodes to some arrangement of states. As a reminder, any individual hex on the board is a node, and the state of the node is the color that it is. We have blue, red, and gray states, as well as offline. There is no meaningful difference between blue, red, and gray, other than they are distinct from one another. Offline states, any node in the offline state cannot be moved into. So when you hack the network, there's just a couple simple rules to follow. You will choose one of the extra hexes in the box and place it on top of the node that you want to hack. This will, of course, change the state of that node, in this case, from blue to red. This is significant because it then changes the subnets. What was once 2 medium-sized red subnets is now one rather long red subnet, and what was once one blue subnet is now two different blue subnets. After you change the state of the system, you will remove any lock tokens that are currently on the board. Presently, there are none. And then you will add lock tokens to any of the systems that were changed. This is meaningful because when you are choosing the nodes that you want to hack, you cannot hack anything with a lock token or with a runner. In short, if there's a small piece of cardboard on it, you can't hack it. Then if Ray were to play his own hack the network, let's say he hacked these two nodes to the offline state. He couldn't have chosen this one, of course, because it's locked, or any of the ones that have runners on them. But after changing the state of the nodes, remove any lock tokens from the network, and then put lock tokens on the newly hacked nodes. From here, of course, that would free this up to be hacked. So on my turn, I could hack it to something else if I wanted, which would then remove those lock tokens and put them on the newly hacked nodes. There are, like I said, a number of effects that refer to hacking, specifically with the word hack, and those all abide by those rules. There are some cards and effects that will say to change the state of a system. Those do not have to follow the same restrictions. You can change the state of anything that has a lock token or a runner on it. The only guideline there is that if something has a runner, you cannot change it to the offline state. Other than that, the cards more or less do what they say. Simply read them and follow the rulings. At the bottom of any given card is a number. We can ignore that number for the purposes of playing a card. That number comes into play during attacking, which we'll get to a little bit later. And if the text of a card includes a smaller section at the bottom that says flip, you can also ignore that while playing a card. That'll also come into play during attacking. And you can see that those cards have a red color scheme to help make it clearly different which ones have that. So the first option you have is to play one card. Another thing you could do on your turn, instead of playing a card, is to activate one runner. You can choose any of your runners on the board and then follow 3 steps. First, they can move up to their speed. Now, a runner's speed is determined not by the runner card, but by the rig you assign to them. For example, Arson Nick down here has a rig with 1 speed. The speed is the yellow number on the rig. Meanwhile, We're In has a rig with 99 speed. So when you can move a number of nodes up to your speed, but you can only enter one new subnet. So when you're moving, you can only enter a new subnet one time. So even though We're In has 99 speed, I could only get as far as here, because right at this juncture I entered a new subnet, so I could not then go further into another subnet. Or in the other direction, I could only get anywhere in this blue subnet, because again, that's entering a new subnet. After moving, a runner can take an action. There are a number of actions available to each runner. We have those all spelled out on the back of this sheet, and let's go through them real quick. The first option for your actions is to withdraw the data, which can only be done if you're adjacent to the enemy data server. So like, let's say here or here. When you withdraw the data, take the die that represents the data and put it on or next to the token for the runner to signify that the runner is the one carrying that data. And when you withdraw the data, make sure to set the die to 5. We'll get into the significance of the 5 when we go over attacking. Another option you have as an action is to secure the data. That can only be done if you're adjacent to your own data server and carrying the enemy data. When you secure the data, You remove the die from your runner, put it back in the enemy data server so you can capture it again. And then whatever number was face up on the die, you flip over that many cards from your deck. I'll put Hack the Network in my discard pile, as I should have when I played it. And in this case, I'll flip over 5 cards. Perfect. I'll put them right over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I will score points equal to the highest number revealed on those cards. So in this case, a 4. I got rather lucky. Most of the cards are 1 to 3. A few of them have 0 and 4. So I would gain 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then these cards would go into my discard pile. Don't worry about putting cards in your discard pile. If there should ever be a time when your deck is empty and you still need to do anything, you just flip over the cards in your discard pile, shuffle them, and that's your new deck, and then you continue resolving whatever it is you are doing. There is never a moment where emptying your deck stops you from being able to complete any sort of action. Another option available for actions, aside from withdrawing and securing the data, is to transfer the data. This is another action that can only be done by a runner who is carrying the data. And when you transfer it, you move the data from your currently activated runner to another allied runner in the same subnet. You're essentially passing it. Another action available to a runner is push it. To push it, you simply move the runner by 1 node. This can be an additional subnet border crossing on your turn. So let's say if I started here and Weirin was over here, he's got his 99 speed. So he goes 1, 2, let's say maybe 3. Can't go any further because when you move, you cannot enter a node that contains another runner. Although you can move through allied runners, so I could have moved, for example, 1, 2, 3 like that. Or perhaps 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you push it, you move 1 additional node as your action. So, like that. Another action available to runners is to attack. So when you attack, you must target another runner, specifically an enemy runner, that is in the same subnet as you. So if you have this right here, Weirin can attack Wild Child. But even though I am closer in terms of nodes on the board, could not attack Wild Child because we're not in the same subnet. On the other hand, if I had something like this setup, Weirin could attack Skeleton D over here because we're in the same subnet. The distance doesn't matter, you just have to be in the same subnet. So when you make an attack, you will reveal cards equal to the strength of that runner. That's the red number in the top right corner of their card. So Weirin has a 2, so I'm going to flip 2 cards. And then I will add up the numbers on the bottom of those cards. When you score, you only take the highest number, but when you attack, you add them all together. Unlike my score earlier, I have been rather unlucky with this flip, and we'll be doing a grand total of 1 damage. Skeleton D over here, let's go look at her card, specifically the rig she's equipped with. The blue number on the rig is the security that the rig provides. It's damage reduction. So I have done 1 damage, and she has a damage reduction of 1. But fortunately, in Black Hats, you cannot reduce the damage dealt below 1. So any attack is going to deal at least 1 damage. So I will at least get 1 paltry point of damage to assign to Skeleton D over here. So I'll drop this little damage token on her. The green number on the rig is the runner's signal strength. Functionally, their hit points. Once they've accrued damage equal to their signal strength, they are disconnected. After flipping your cards and dealing your damage, the cards you flip will go into your discard pile, and then the attack is over. There are a couple other things to note about attacks, though. If you look at the cards in my hand, you'll see I've got two with that red background, and with a section at the bottom that says flip, colon, and then some text. When those cards are flipped as part of an attack, you resolve the text that comes after that word flip. So, for example, here with peer-to-peer, if the target of this attack is the data, flip an additional card. So that might let my attack do more damage. Which brings me to my next note, that in addition to attacking runners, you can also attack the data. So let's say Skeleton D here was carrying my data, and I don't want to let her get that all the way back to the data server. So instead of attacking Skeleton D, I could attack the data. So let's try that instead. Weirin still flips 2 cards when he attacks, so let's go ahead and do that. In this case, I will be doing a total of 4 damage. I do have a flip effect on RM minus R, but it only applies against runners adjacent to 2 of my allies, and I don't have any allies over there, so we don't need to worry about that. So that'll be doing 4 damage. The data has signal strength equal to whatever number is facing up on the die, but unfortunately for me, it also has security equal to the number facing up on the die. Remembering that security is damage reduction, this 4 damage isn't enough to bypass that, so I'll just be reduced to the minimum of 1. So I'll change the die from a 5 to a 4 to reflect that. Fortunately, this means that even if I don't get any more hits off on that data before he scores it, he'll only be flipping 4 cards when he scores the data, making it less likely that he'll flip a high number when it comes to determining how many points he'll get for capturing it. If I were to reduce it to 0, then I would simply remove the die, put it back on the data server it started in, and set the value back to 5. If my attack had been against Skeleton D had been strong enough to accumulate damage equal to her signal strength, she would be disconnected. When a runner is disconnected, first thing that would happen is you score a point. In this case, that would actually make me win the game. But we'll set that aside for a moment. When you disconnect a runner, you remove their token from the network, set it off to the side for now, and later on, when we get to the end of round phase, we'll talk about how disconnected runners come back. So for now, that's the summary of attacking. You pick an enemy runner or a data carried by the enemy runner in the same subnet as your runner, flip a number of cards equal to their strength number, add up the damage on the bottom, subtract the security of the target, and deal that much damage, whatever's left, to a minimum of 1 to the target. Finally, the last action available to a runner is that runner's signature action. Every runner has their own signature action written on their card. Runners also have a passive ability, but the part at the bottom where it says signature, colon, and then some text, that's their signature action. That's something that they can do as their action for the turn. Additionally, if you are somehow in a situation where you don't want to take any action, that's okay. Finally, after taking or not taking an action on a runner, you exhaust them. Simply flip their token over. And you can see on the back side, it's a little grayed out. It's got a loading icon. That runner's done. When you're choosing a runner to activate for your turn, you cannot choose a runner that's exhausted. Functionally, this means almost always you'll be activating each of your runners once each round. So to go back up a level, on your turn you have 3 options. 1, play a card, do what it says. Or activate 1 runner. move them however far you'd like, up to their movement speed, and crossing into only one new subnet. Then take any of the available actions, then flip the token over to show that they're exhausted. The third option you have on your turn is just to pass for the round. You just say, I pass. And then it's back to your opponent. And then after your opponent's turn, if they want to continue taking turns, they can. They can continue going until they also decide to pass. So if you pass very early, just know you can expect your opponent to unleash a flurry of uninterrupted activity. At the end of the round, once both players have passed, there's just a couple quick steps. First, any exhausted runners, flip them back up so they're available to use next round. If there are any lock tokens on the network, simply remove them. Then each player draws 2 cards into their hand. And then finally, you reconnect any runners that had been disconnected. When you reconnect a runner, the player who disconnected them gets to choose where they go. So they will return to their owner's home row. So I disconnected Skeleton D, which is Ray's runner, and Ray's home row is, of course, these 6 hexes. So I can place D in any of those hexes that I want, as long as it's not a hex that already contains a runner. So maybe I stick her back here because I don't want her anywhere near my data. Or maybe I'd put her over here because I don't want her to stop me from getting his. Either way, I can put her in any of these available hexes in his home row. And after that, whoever has the fewest points chooses who gets the first player token for the following round. So assuming I hadn't won the game there, Ray has 0 points to my, let's say, 4, so Ray would choose who gets the first player token. Maybe he wants to give it to me. Maybe he wants to assign it to himself. That's up to him. If we were tied, then whoever has the first player token must give it to the other player. Nobody gets a choice. It must be exchanged. After that, you're ready to start a new round, starting with a turn for whoever has the first player token. And you continue until somebody gets 5 points. And that's Black Hats, baby.
Hack the planet!
Jesus.